Welcome back, everybody, to another episode of Indie Reads Aloud. I am really happy to bring this new to me author to you. And as it turns out, he is a new author as well. His book is still an infant, just recently published. This is Brian Talarczyk. I get that right, Brian?
You did.
Welcome to the program.
Thank you very much. I'm very glad to be here, Diane.
I'm thrilled to have you here. You published with Mountain Ash Press, and I just love them to death. I think they're doing great things in the universe, and I'm so happy that they referred you to me. Your book is called I Am Not Bipolar, and this is a memoir, correct?
It is, yes.
Okay. I want to let everybody know just a listener advisory before we begin. This is going to be a discussion, a very open discussion about mental illness. So if you have any triggers around that, or if you have little ears nearby, you might want to preview this episode before you let the little ones listen in. All right, Brian, this has been a long journey for you. You told me in the green room that this is about a 10-year, maybe 15-year exploration of your own mental illness history. What was the deciding factor that made you say, you know what, this is difficult stuff, but I'm still going to put it on the page for the world?
A deciding factor, I would say, was more of an evolution. But if there was a deciding factor, it was after meeting my wife in 2009. It was on the heels of my second psychotic episode in hospitalization. She's really the one that where my life did a bit of a turning point on my
Nice.
own feelings towards my mental illness, its context, thinking through, just kind of empowering myself through dealing with the things that I had to deal with, and writing them down first in a journal and then to short stories and eventually into a book. So the turning point for me to say, you know what, I think I can make this public, really, I would say, is meeting her and several years later, her encouraging me to publish this.
How
So
wonderful that you have such a strong support system in your life.
we do, and we actually talk about bipolar disorder is one of the things, because she really helps me manage it on a daily basis. It's one of the things that is, we can say has brought us closer together, or at least, we don't shy away from, we don't have a lot of passive aggressiveness in our marriage. We don't shy away from the harder conversations because there's too much kind of at risk with the more serious flavor of my mental illness. So from that perspective, yeah, she encouraged me to do this, but it's also it's part of our relationship. Like all things, it's an illness, and couples have to
Yep.
deal with illness, and that's really.
Absolutely. Yeah. And I love that you're taking that clinical approach to it because you're removing all of the shame, blame, emotional baggage that a lot of people have with it. So I said in the green room, I think you're tremendously courageous for putting this on the page.
Oh,
I feel that way about any book, but especially books that hit people so personally. So thank you for taking the time and really delving into how this might be able to help others.
yeah, I appreciate that. Yeah, that's the goal. I think it's everybody has a personal journey with their own personal mental demons, and if you are diagnosed with a mental illness, I can't really, I think everybody has to come up with their own coping mechanisms a lot, and I go
Sure.
into that in the book. But for me, I wanted to share the story I say of this is what you shouldn't do if you're diagnosed with a mental illness. Learn from my mistakes, and
Hmm.
so that's really the vantage point of the book.
That's fantastic. I'm looking forward to hearing a little bit of your book. I'm always interested in learning new perspectives about life and how people see things. So I'm excited to have you read. When you are ready, sir, please take the microphone and read aloud.
All right, I think we're ready. I'm going to start with the beginning of the book, which opens with a vignette, and then I'll go into the beginning of the chapter. Very good. All right. Friday, April 27th, 2001. I awake to the sound of my Motorola flip phone vibrating on the nightstand beside the bed. I pick up the phone and see there are 6 messages, all from my sister, Joy, all left in the middle of the night. Something's wrong. Something is very, very wrong. 2 messages means Joy has something important to tell me. 6 messages in just a few short hours is a crisis. I sit up and listen to the first. Beach, please call me as soon as you get this, she says in a state of utter panic. Dad had a heart attack. He's in the hospital here in New Haven. A wave of anxiety paralyzes me, and I drop the phone. Sarah, my girlfriend, rolls over from her deep sleep and puts her hand on my thigh. She can tell by the stunned look on my face that something is indeed wrong. Brian, are you okay? She asks. What happened? I don't know what to say to her. I don't want to believe it. I don't want to verbalize it and make it real. I attempt to call Joy, but I can't get a cell phone signal in the rural town of Waterville Valley, New Hampshire, where Sarah and I are visiting my best friend from high school, Marcia, and her husband, Charlie. I had brought Sarah here to introduce her to Marcia for the first time, to show Sarah off like a trophy I had recently won. We had arrived just the night before, but now we must go immediately. We pack our suitcases frantically, then get on the highway, where I am finally able to reach Joy. How is he doing? I ask, now in a state of full panic. It's not good, Beej, she says in a tearful voice. His heart attack resulted in further complications in the middle of the night, and he slipped into a coma. I begin to cry. Sarah grabs hold of my hand and steps on the gas. He's going to be okay, Brian, Sarah says. Yes, he's going to be okay, I tell myself, over and over and over again. He's going to be just fine. The drive to the hospital in New Haven, Connecticut is a long one, made even longer by the early morning traffic. When we arrive, I leap out of the car and run ahead of Sarah, shaking and breathless. My watery eyes are blurry. My mind is spinning like a roulette wheel. We stumble through an endless maze of dark hallways lined with wheelchairs and gurneys until we finally reach the ICU. I push open the heavy double doors and see Joy standing in the waiting area next to Mom, Uncle Joe, Grandma, and the rest of our family. Joy runs to me. She hugs me and cries into my shoulder. I give a moment to release, but my foreboding overcomes me. Joy, where's Dad? Joy leads me to the front desk where she tells the on-duty nurse I'm her brother. The nurse nods and we continue to Dad's room. When we reach it, Joy moves close to me, grabs hold of my arms and stares deep into my eyes. They aren't sure if he's going to make it, Beach, she says, choking up. I don't believe her. Dad's stronger than that. Dad's stronger than all of us. He'll pull through, I say. Let me be with him. I walk into the cool, dimly lit room and close the door behind me. I gasp at the sight of Dad lying lifeless on the bed. An air tube is plugged into his nose and electrodes are taped to his bare chest and fat belly. I pull a chair from the corner of the room and sit beside him, grabbing his hand with both of mine. It's warm and clammy, yet limp, absent. I examine his face, nestled gently into the pillow. His lips are an off shade of violet, his cheeks flush white. His eyes remain closed. He seems unaware that I am here, but appears to be at peace. I want to say so many things, but I can barely get my thoughts past my stalled brain to my clenched throat. Finally, I mutter, "Hold on, Dad. Lord God, I pray, please let him hold on." I sit alone with him for a while, watching his torso move up and down in steady rhythm with the slow gurgle of the oxygen machine. I glance up at the heart rate monitor periodically and watch the green blips crawl slowly across the antiquated screen, tiny hints of life ticking like an analog clock. I brush my hand along the side of his face and beg him to wake up, but I can tell we're beyond that now. He's beyond that, and when we both come to terms with that, I let go of his hand and walk over to the foot of his bed. I stand as upright and strong as I can, taking deep breaths until I'm fully composed. "Don't worry, Dad," I say. "I'll take care of Mom. I'll take care of everything. I promise." I breathe in and calm myself further. "I love you," I say, and just as I do, a steady buzz rings out, and the green blips on the monitor go flat. The word journey is often used to describe a series of events that take place throughout one's life that are difficult to deal with, such as my journey with alcoholism or my journey with cancer. But I don't like that word. It makes alcoholism and cancer sound a lot more enjoyable than they are, as if the inflicted had thought about their struggles ahead of time, bought a plane ticket and some new hiking boots, loaded up a backpack with granola bars, and went on some glamorous excursion to explore them. Unfortunately, I don't have a better word which encompasses the breadth of my bipolar disorder experiences, and neither does thesaurus.com. Expedition, pilgrimage, odyssey, adventure, none of them really cut it. Discovery is a bit closer, but doesn't pack as much of a punch as it probably should. Whatever you want to call my journey with bipolar, it began in 2001. That was the year my father died, and his death was the trigger event that caused my illness to surface within me for the first time, even though I had been lurking inside my chromosomes since the day I was born. It was April 27, 2001 to be exact, just 3 days before my 27th birthday, when I stood at the foot of my father's hospital bed and watched him die. He was 55 years old at the time, the same age I'll be turning in a few years. He was far too young to leave us, far too young to have a massive heart attack from which his body could not recover. Even though my dad was not in the best health, 30 pounds over his ideal weight and smoking 2 packs of Marlboro Lights a day, losing him so suddenly confused us all. One day he was his jovial self, taking my mother to a Saturday movie matinee, driving down to Virginia to play in a golf tournament with me and my coworkers. The next, he was cheering on his racehorse at the off-track betting center in New Haven when he instantly began gasping for breath. Grabbing his chest, he fell to the ground and lay there unconscious for untold minutes. In the weeks following his death, I missed him more and on deeper levels. The loving relationship we had shared had created a dependency I was not cognizant of. After the initial trauma faded, I drew inward. Instead of reaching out to Joy and Mom and burrowing into the love of our extended family in the greater New Haven area, I returned to my life in Alexandria, Virginia, where I was living at the time, and excluding them, refusing to allow myself to feel my cataclysmic loss. I threw myself into the small software development business I had founded the year prior. Less than a week after the funeral, I was fully immersed in work, flying all around the country to visit clients, often without a reason. When working 40 hours a week wasn't enough to suppress the pain, I ramped up to 50. And when that still wasn't doing the trick, I pushed to 60. My colleagues and clients were amazed at my productivity, and I could feel myself soaring beyond my own wildest expectations for startup success. I had morphed into a fast-talking, instant-thinking, hyper-vigilant super creator, rarely tired, always driven. By the time Thanksgiving rolled around, my consulting income was at an all-time high, but my emotional health was deep in the red, a condition I was in no way capable of confronting. Since the funeral, I had allowed myself to be enticed home only twice. The first time was to attend the wedding of 2 close college friends, who asked me to sing and play acoustic guitar as they walked down the aisle. I played and sang terribly, drank myself into an incoherent stupor during the reception, and puked all over the hotel room. My second visit was to attend the first birthday party of my nephew, Josh. Joy and her husband, Greg, brought our entire family together for the celebration that August, a gathering that doubled as a chance for us to come together under happier circumstances, after several months of lamenting my father's passing. But I did not stay long enough to engage in the inevitable rounds of tears and stories of all the things he did to make us laugh. Mom and Joy had asked me to come home on multiple other occasions to check up on me and make sure I was handling my dad's death in a healthy fashion, but I always had a good excuse. However, when Thanksgiving arrived, I had no choice in the matter. I was obliged to go to my Uncle Joe's house, where my father's family had gathered since I was a child. I had no excuses to save me, no way to block out the dissonant voices I knew I would have to endure. By that time, of course, September 11th had turned the world upside down. The attacks just a few months before were never far from anyone's mind. It was a very difficult time for our country, and for me, the tragedy furthered the grief and confusion I felt after losing my father. In the weeks that followed, I managed to conflate the sudden, horrific loss of life with my dad's death, forcing myself to stop thinking about either one. Somehow, in the dizzying fog of suppressed emotions, I believed that there was some mysterious connection between the two, and I promised myself I would get to the bottom of it one day, just as soon as I could take a break from work. That would not, I firmly decided, be over Thanksgiving weekend. I was going to drive home to Connecticut, exchange superficial niceties with family and friends, then return to Virginia without so much as a moment of sentimentality. My goal for Thanksgiving dinner was to make an appearance at Uncle Joe's, smile and nod, then get out of there, emotionally unscathed. It was delusional at best to have thought I could get through the gathering without incident. I had barely slept since my dad's death 7 months before. Every nerve ending in my body was hypersensitive, and every breath I took was painful. Sure enough, from the moment I stepped into Uncle Joe's entryway, my plans went awry. Barely in the front door, I felt the crush of Uncle Joe's beefy arms around me. I could smell the celebratory libations in his breath, and I felt his need to hold me fast. I could make no attempt to pry myself loose. "We're going to miss your father today," he said. "I'm going to miss my big brother. These holidays will never be the same." He broke down and wept into my captive chest. Over his shoulder, I watched everyone join him. My grandmother, who had glued herself to her parish priest's side since the day she laid my father in the ground, wailed as she had at the funeral. Joy, my normally sanguine sister, was tucked firmly into Greg's arms, sobbing gently. Even Nikki, my Aunt Louise's playful golden retriever, looked glum and listless. The only person in the room who seemed to be holding it together was Mom, whose face betrayed none of the anguish she might have felt. She stood apart from the commotion, peacefully sipping her ginger ale, unperturbed by the sorrowful chorus. To look at her, one might have thought it was just another holiday at her in-laws, but I knew that deep inside she must have been as dispirited as everyone else. The manner in which Mom processed my father's passing was the polar opposite of mine. Though my dad was the center of her life for over 30 years, she had quickly adjusted to life without him, just like she quickly adjusts to pretty much anything. Each time I talked to her on the phone, she was explaining her next coping mechanism to me. First, she joined a widow's support group assembled through her church, where she had found Confederates from whom she could unabashedly derive comfort. Next, she took a job as a librarian at the University of New Haven to support herself financially, where she became good friends with several of her coworkers. With additional support from Joy and Greg, who lived nearby, she pushed through the heart-wrenching loss of my father with poise and determination. I forced myself to look away from Mom. I could feel a tug behind my eyes, and I was not about to fall prey to the communal outpouring of sadness that seemed to have turned the holiday into a reprise of Dad's wake and the gathering held after, right there in Uncle Joe's house. I made a beeline for the dining room and poured myself an extra-large glass of red wine. As everyone filtered in for dinner, I made sure I sit at the opposite end of the table from Joy and Mom. I talked about the Yankees' frustrating postseason defeat with my cousins, but my mind had ventured far from the company of relatives. Inside my head, I had conversation with clients and colleagues and fretted because I wasn't actively working. There is so much to be done, I thought. My consulting work was eminently more important than Thanksgiving dinner. Uncle Joe was right. Our holidays would never be the same. But I would not engage in any moribund obsession with what a great guy Dad was. He was dead. I had responsibilities to take care of. As we passed trays of antipasta around the table, seasoned with speculation over the Giants' prospects for reaching the Super Bowl, I remained aloof, concentrating on my inner monologue. Then suddenly, all faded to an awkward silence as the inevitable awareness of 9/11 insinuated itself into our midst, snapping me out of my trance. At first, the conversation around the dinner table was positive, upbeat, focused on the inspirational aftermaths of the tragedy, the bravery of the NYFD, NYPD, and first responders, how unified and supportive our nation had become as we bonded together to understand life in a post-9/11 world. Then, however, politics inserted its ugliness, and the conspiracy theories began to fly. Since it was a long time ago, I don't recall everything that was discussed that day, but it went something like this. They give us colored threat codes to warn us about attacks, blue, green, yellow, orange, but they don't tell us what they really mean or how they'll protect us. The government just needs an excuse to curtail our civil liberties. We'll be victims of the Patriot Act before any terrorists are taught. That's not true. There are terrorists everywhere. Osama bin Laden is trying to poison us all with anthrax. One more minute. As the absurdity rambled on, I held my breath, wondering if someone was going to suggest that the terrorists had conspired to kill my dad as well before they destroyed the World Trade Centers. It was an abstract notion, but it was an abstract day, at least for me. I shook my head to drive the bizarre thought out, but it bored more deeply into my cranium. I needed to disengage, so I escaped to the adjacent kitchen, where I pretended to be engrossed in slicing Italian bread. Mom suddenly looked up. Our eyes connected, and the lump that rose in my throat threatened to undo me. Her look asked the question I had heard so often over my lifetime. She needed no words to make me hear it. "How are you doing?" her eyes implored. I looked away. I could face neither her nor the answer she sought. How am I doing? Terrible. But I wasn't about to admit that to her, or to myself. My stomach tightened, and the taste of vomit formed in my mouth. Afraid I might hurl right there into the bread bowl, I darted down the hall to the bathroom, locked the door behind me, and sat on the cold tiled floor next to the toilet, shaking. I could not speak or cry, and suddenly everything I was holding inside heaved itself into the bowl. I was motionless. All I could do was kneel there, gripping the toilet seat like a sailor, holding his ship's wheel as he steers through a perilous storm. When my body finally calmed, I studied the foul contents, examining each piece of myself.
Wow. Okay, so I'm going to run over to Amazon and buy your book.
Well, that's very nice of you.
It's the beginning of what I know will be a very powerful story. And again, I just want to commend you for your bravery in telling us this story because I think there's a lot of people who are going to find resonance with it.
I appreciate that, and I hope so. That's why I wrote the book, is really to kind of share my story in hopes that other people will openly share theirs, because it's ultimately through that I was able to deal with a lot of the things that were kind of forced upon me.
Absolutely. I hope you will come back when you write your next book and
Okay,
read for me again. I mean,
sounds
I'm
good.
just a recovering 6-year-old. I like it when people read out loud to me, and I love hearing people's life stories.
Cool.
So if you decide you want to write a second one, I'd love to have you back.
I absolutely will. Thank you, Diane. Thanks for
Thank
having
you.
me.
Thank you.